Welcome to a thought-provoking journey into the mind, where the contrasting views of Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis, meet the timeless teachings of Buddhism. Freud's theories revolutionized Western psychology, but how do they hold up when compared to the wisdom of Buddhist philosophy? And what does modern science have to say about it? Before we dive into it, please share your comments about Buddhism versus Freud. It's always fascinating to read your insights in the comments below. Freud's view of the mind. Sigmund Freud believed that human behavior was largely driven by unconscious forces, repressed desires, memories, and instincts that influence our actions without us even realizing it. He famously divided the mind into three parts: the id, which houses our most primal urges, like the drive for pleasure and aggression; the ego, which mediates between those primal urges and the reality of the outside world; and the superego, which serves as our moral compass, shaped by societal norms. Freud saw human suffering as arising from the tension between these forces. His solution, psychoanalysis, a method designed to bring repressed thoughts and desires into the open, allowing people to resolve their inner conflicts and reduce suffering. Freud's approach had a significant influence on modern psychology, particularly in how we think about the unconscious mind. His work on childhood development introduced the idea that early experiences shape who we are as adults. He emphasized how unresolved conflicts from our past could continue to affect us, leading to anxiety, neurosis, and other mental health issues. While some of Freud's original theories have been revised, the idea that our past plays a vital role in shaping our present mental state remains an important part of psychological therapy today. For example, many therapeutic approaches still use Freud's insights, especially when dealing with trauma. A person with childhood trauma might not consciously remember the event, but it may still be affecting their behavior and emotions. Psychoanalysis, or its modern derivatives, helps to bring those unconscious memories and feelings into awareness, where they can be processed and healed. Buddhism's view of the mind. In contrast, Buddhism teaches that human suffering doesn't come from repressed desires, but from ignorance and attachment. The mind, according to Buddhism, is inherently clear and aware, but it becomes clouded by misconceptions, cravings, and attachments. The goal of Buddhist practice is to liberate the mind from these attachments through mindfulness, meditation, and ethical living. Key contrasts between Freud and Buddhism. Freud believed that much of human behavior is driven by unconscious desires, particularly those related to sex and aggression. He saw these desires as something we needed to bring into the conscious mind to resolve inner conflict and reduce suffering. In contrast, Buddhism takes a different approach. Rather than focusing on hidden desires, Buddhism teaches that desire itself is the source of suffering. The key to freedom, according to Buddhist philosophy, lies in letting go of attachment to these desires altogether, recognizing that they're fleeting and impermanent. Another major difference is how Freud and Buddhism view the self. Freud placed great emphasis on the ego, believing it was essential for a balanced and healthy psyche. He saw the ego as something we needed to strengthen in order to navigate our inner conflicts and the world around us. Buddhism, however, introduces the idea of Anatta, or no self. It suggests that the ego is an illusion, a construct that keeps us trapped in suffering. According to Buddhist teachings, peace comes from realizing that the self is not permanent, and that everything is interconnected and constantly changing. Then there's the question of the unconscious. Freud believed the unconscious mind was a kind of hidden vault where we store our repressed desires and unresolved issues, and his therapy aimed at bringing these to the surface. But Buddhism doesn't view the unconscious in the same way. Instead of a dark, hidden place, the unconscious in Buddhism is simply clouded by ignorance. Through mindfulness and meditation, we can clear away that ignorance and experience the mind in its true enlightened state. Western versus Eastern approaches. This brings us to an interesting contrast between Western and Eastern philosophies of the mind. Freud's approach, rooted in Western psychology, focuses heavily on the individual's past and their internal conflicts. The The goal is often to uncover the hidden roots of suffering, whether they stem from childhood experiences or repressed desires. In a way, Freud's method digs deep into the individual's personal history, believing that this will lead to healing. Buddhism, on the other hand, takes a broader view. It emphasizes that suffering isn't just about individual conflict or trauma. It's about attachment to the very things we desire and to the belief in a permanent self. Rather than focusing on the past, Buddhism encourages people to live in the present moment and to recognize the impermanent, interconnected nature of all things. Both of these approaches offer valuable insights. Freud's focus on the past helps people resolve old wounds, but Buddhism's focus on non-attachment provides a path to transcend suffering entirely by changing how we relate to the present and the self. In fact, modern therapies increasingly combine these two approaches, using both insight into past trauma and mindfulness techniques to offer a more complete solution to mental health challenges. What does modern science say? Now, let's bring modern science into the mix. What do we know about the mind today, and how does it align with Freud or Buddhism? When it comes to Freud's theory of the unconscious, modern science does support the idea that much of our behavior is driven by automatic, unconscious processes. Cognitive psychology has shown that habits, biases, and conditioned responses often operate outside of our awareness. However, Freud's focus on repressed desires, especially sexual ones, has been largely refined. Today, the unconscious is seen more as a network of automatic functions rather than a storehouse of hidden desires. Still, research into psychotherapy confirms that processing past experiences, especially trauma, is important for mental health. Freud's idea that unresolved emotions influence behavior remains a foundational aspect of many therapeutic approaches today. On the other hand, science also strongly supports Buddhism's focus on mindfulness and meditation. Numerous studies show that mindfulness practices help reduce stress, anxiety, and depression. Through meditation, the brain's prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for focus and decision-making, becomes more active, while the amygdala, which drives emotional reactivity, calms down. This supports Buddhism's teaching that mindfulness clears the mind of attachment and fosters a balanced, peaceful state. Additionally, modern neuroscience increasingly challenges the idea of a fixed, permanent self, something Freud emphasized through the concept of the ego. Research shows that the self is more of a mental construct, constantly changing based on experiences and neural processes. This aligns with Buddhism's teaching of Anatta, the idea that the self is an illusion. While Freud's psychoanalysis offers valuable tools for dealing with trauma and unconscious conflicts, Buddhism's teachings on mindfulness, impermanence, and non-attachment provide a more universal and scientifically supported approach to overcoming suffering. Both perspectives have their merits, but when it comes to finding long-term peace of mind and well-being, modern science increasingly aligns with the Buddhist path of awareness and letting go. Thanks for watching. Please share your thoughts in the comments below and subscribe to the channel for more videos about Buddhism, science, and spirituality.